Happy Friday. It's official. Today's a special day. It happens to be Toni Morrison's birthday. That was totally accidental. She didn't do it just to fit our schedule. But I realized this morning that this was an auspicious day, and particularly since I am reading her first and only short story, Recitatif. And I think what we're going to do is just a little bit of a heads up. I'm going to read to you from the introduction, which is done by Zadie Smith. And it's really quite extraordinary, but I'm not going to go into it that much because this end of this week and the end of next week, I'd like to read the entire short story to you so you get the whole thing. And then I'm going to do something delightful, at least to me delightful, reading a Zora Neale Hurston short story. And you'll see the differences between those two styles. They're both superior. And now this is Recitatif, which has just been published in a single book format, a story by Toni Morrison. She's the winner, among other things, of the Nobel Prize in Literature, and the introduction itself, which I'm first going to be accessing, is by Zadie Smith. And it starts. The characters in question are Twyla and Roberta, two poor girls, 8 years old, and wards of the state, who spend 4 months together in St. Bonaventure's shelter. Very first thing we learn about them from Twyla is this. My mother danced all night, and Roberta's was sick. A little later, they were placed together in room 406, stuck in a strange place with a girl from a whole different race. What we never learn definitely, no matter how closely we read, is which of these girls is black and which white. We will assume, we can insist, but we can't be sure. And this despite the fact that we get to see them grow up, becoming adults who occasionally run into each other. We eavesdrop when they speak, examine their clothes, hear their husbands, their jobs, their children, their lives. The crucial detail is withheld. A puzzle of a story, then. A game. Only Toni Morrison does not play. When she called Recitatif an experiment, she meant it. The subject of the experiment is the reader. But before going any further into the ingenious design of this philosophical brain teaser, the title itself is worth a good, long look. Recitatif. Noun, mass noun. 1. Musical declamation of the kind usual in the narrative and dialogue parts of opera and oratorio. Sung in the rhythm of ordinary speech with many words on the same note. Singing in recitatif. 2. The tone or rhythm peculiar to any language. The music of Morrison begins in ordinary speech. Her ear was acute, and rescuing African-American speech patterns from the debasements of the American mainstream is a defining feature of her early work. Now, in this story, though, the challenge of capturing ordinary speech has been deliberately complicated. For many words are here to be sung on the same note. That is, we will hear the words of Twyla and the words of Roberta, and although they are perfectly differentiated, the one from the other, we will not be able to differentiate them in the one way we really want to. An experiment easy to imagine, but difficult to execute. In order to make it work, you'd need to write in such a way that every phrase precisely straddled the line between characteristic black and white. American speech, and that's a high wire, act in this eagle-eyed country, ever alert to racial codes, adept at categorization, in which most people feel they can spot a black or white speaker with their eyes closed, precisely because of the tone and the rhythm peculiar to their language. And beyond language, in a racialized system, all manner of things will read as peculiar to one kind of person or another. The food a character eats, the music they like, where they live, how they work. Black things, white things, things that are peculiar to our people or peculiar to theirs. But one of the questions of Recitatif is precisely what that phrase, peculiar to, really signifies. For we tend to use it variously, not realizing that we do. It can mean, 1, that which characterizes. 2, that which belongs exclusively to. And 3, that which is an essential quality of. Now, these 3 are not the same. The first suggests a tendency. The second implies some form of ownership. And the third speaks of essences and therefore of immutable natural laws. In Recitatif, these differences prove crucial, as we shall see. When reading Recitatif with students, there is a moment where the class grows uncomfortable with their own eagerness to settle the question, maybe because most attempts to answer it tend to reveal more about the reader than the character. And I want to flip through. And toward the end of the introduction, she states, still, like most readers of Recitatif, I found it impossible not to hunger to know who the other was, Twyla or Roberta. Oh, I urgently wanted to have it straightened out, wanted to sympathize warmly in one sure place, turn cold in the other, to feel for the somebody and dismiss the nobody. But this is precisely what Morrison deliberately and methodically will not allow me to do. It's worth asking ourselves why. Recitatif reminds me that it is not essentially black or white to be poor, oppressed, lesser than, exploited, ignored. The answer to what the hell happened to Maggie? Maggie is a character we're going to be introduced to later in the story, is not written in the stars or in the blood or in the genes or forever predetermined by her history. Whatever was done to Maggie was done by people. People like Twyla and Roberta. People like you. and me. And now, no more about the story. We're going to leap into the story. My mother danced all night, and Roberta's was sick. Now that's why we were taken to St. Bonnie's. People want to put their arms around you when you tell them that you were in a shelter. But it really wasn't bad. No big, long room with 100 beds, like Bellevue. There were 4 to a room, and when Roberta and me came, there was a shortage of state kids. So we were the only ones assigned to 406 and could go from bed to bed if we wanted to. Oh, and we wanted to, of course. We changed beds every night, and for the whole 4 months we were there, we never picked one out as our own permanent bed. Now, it didn't start out that way. The minute I walked in and the big bozo introduced us, I got sick to my stomach. Now, it was one thing to be taken out of your own bed early in the morning. Oh, it was something else to be stuck in a strange place with a girl from a whole other race. And Mary, now that's my mother, she was right. Every now and then she would stop dancing long enough to tell me something important, and one of the things she said was that they never washed their hair and they smelled funny. Roberta sure did. Smell funny, I mean. So when the big bozo, nobody ever called her Mrs. Itkin, just like nobody ever said Saint Bonaventure. When she said, Twyla, this is Roberta. Roberta, this is Twyla. Make each other welcome. I said, my mother won't like you putting me in here. Good, said Bozo. Maybe then she'll come and take you home. Now, how's that for mean? If Roberta had laughed, I would have killed her, but she didn't. She just walked over to the window and stood with her back to us. Turn around, said the bozo. Don't be rude. Now, Twyla, Roberta, when you hear a loud buzzer, that's the call for dinner. Come down on the first floor. Any fights? No movie. And then, just to make sure we knew what we'd be missing, The Wizard of Oz. Roberta must have thought I meant that my mother would be mad about my being put in the shelter. Oh, not about rooming with her, because as soon as Bozo left, she came over to me and said, Is your mother sick, too? No, I said, she just likes to dance all night. Oh. She nodded her head, and I liked the way she understood things so fast. So for the moment it didn't matter that we looked like salt and pepper standing there, and that's what the other kids called us sometimes. We were 8 years old and got F's all the time. Me, because I couldn't remember what I read or what the teacher said. And Roberta, because, well, she couldn't read at all and didn't even listen to the teacher. She wasn't good at anything except jacks, at which she was a killer. Pow, scoop, pow, scoop, pow, scoop. Now, we didn't like each other all that much at first. But nobody else wanted to play with us because we weren't real orphans with beautiful dead parents in the sky. We were dumped. Even the New York City Puerto Ricans and the upstate Indians ignored us. All kinds of kids were in there. Black ones, white ones. Even 2 Koreans. The food was good, though. Well, at least I thought so. Roberta hated it and left whole pieces of things on her plate. Spam, Salisbury steak, even Jell-O with a fruit cocktail in it. She didn't care if I ate what she didn't want. Mary's idea of supper was popcorn and a can of Yoo-hoo. Hot mashed potatoes and 2 weenies was like Thanksgiving to me. Oh, it really wasn't bad, St. Bonnie's. The big girls on the second floor pushed us around now and then, but that was all. They wore lipstick and eyebrow pencil and wobbled their knees while they watched TV. 15, 16 even, some of them were. They were put-out girls, scared runaways, most of them. Poor little girls who fought their uncles off, but looked tough to us. Mean. God, did they look mean. Now, the staff tried to keep them separate from the younger children, but sometimes they caught us watching them in the orchard, where they played radios and danced with each other. Oh, they'd light out after us and pull our hair and twist our arms. We were scared of them, Roberta and me, but neither of us wanted the other one to know it. So we got a good list of dirty names we could shout back when we ran from them through the orchard. I used to dream a lot. Almost always the orchard was there. 2 acres, 4 maybe, of these little apple trees, hundreds of them, empty and crooked like beggar woman when I first came to St. Bonnie's, but fat with flowers when I left. I don't know why I dreamt about the orchard so much. Nothing really happened there. I mean, nothing at all important, I mean. Just the big girls dancing and playing the radio. Roberta and me watching. Maggie fell down there once. Oh, the kitchen woman, with legs like parentheses. And the big girls laughed at her. Oh, we should have helped her up. I know, but we were scared of those girls with lipstick and eyebrow pencil. Maggie couldn't talk. The kids said she had her tongue cut out. But I think she was just born that way. Mute. She was old and sandy-colored, and she worked in the kitchen. I don't know if she was nice or not. I just remember her legs like parentheses and how she rocked when she walked. She worked from early in the morning till 2 o'clock. And if she was late, if she had too much cleaning and didn't get out till 2:15 or so, she'd cut through the orchard so she wouldn't miss her bus and have to wait another hour. She wore this really stupid little hat, kind of a kid's hat with ear flaps, and she wasn't much taller than we were. A really awful little hat, even for a mute. It was dumb, dressing like a kid and never saying anything at all. But what about if someone tries to kill her? I used to wonder about that. Or if she wants to cry. Can she cry? Sure, Roberta said, but just tears, no sounds come out. She can't scream? Nope, nothing. Can she hear? Well, I guess. Let's call her, I said, and we did. Dummy, dummy. She never turned her head. Bow legs, bow legs. Nothing. She just rocked on. Chin straps of her baby boy hat swaying from side to side. I think we were wrong. I think she could hear and just didn't let on. Oh, and it shames me even now to think that there was somebody in there, after all, who heard us call her those names and couldn't tell on us. We got along all right, Roberta and me. Changed beds every night. Got F's in civics and communication skills. And Jim, the bozo, was disappointed in us, she said. Out of 130 of us state cases, 90 were under 12. Almost all were real orphans with beautiful dead parents in the sky. We were the only ones dumped, and the only ones with F's in 3 classes, including Jim. So we got along. What with her leaving whole pieces of things on her plate and being nice about not asking questions. I think it was the day before Maggie fell down that we found out our mothers were coming to visit us on the same Sunday. We had been at the shelter 28 days when Roberta, at 28 and a half, and this was their first visit with us. Our mothers would come at 10 o'clock in time for chapel, then lunch with us in the teacher's lounge. I thought if my dancing mother met her sick mother, it might be good for her. And Roberta thought her sick mother would get a big bang out of a dancing one. Oh, we got excited about it, curled each other's hair. After breakfast, we sat on the bed, watching the road from the window. Now, Roberta's socks were still wet. She washed them the night before and put them on the radiator to dry. They hadn't. But she put them on anyway because their tops were so pretty, scalloped in pink. Each of us had a purple construction paper basket that we had made in craft class. Mine had a yellow crayon rabbit on it. Roberta's had eggs with wiggly lines of color. Inside were cellophane, grass, and just the jelly beans, because I'd eaten the 2 marshmallow eggs they gave us. Big Bozo came herself to get us. Smiling, she told us we looked very nice and to come on downstairs. We were so surprised by the smile we'd never seen before. Neither of us moved. Don't you want to see your mommies? I stood up first, spilled the jelly beans all over the floor. Bozo's smile disappeared while we scrambled to get the candy up off the floor, put it back in the grass. She escorted us downstairs to the first floor, where the other girls were lining up to file into the chapel. A bunch of grown-ups stood on one side, viewers mostly. The old biddies who wanted servants, fags who wanted company looking for their children who they might want to adopt. Once in a while, a grandmother. Almost never anybody young or anybody whose face wouldn't scare you in the night. Because if any real orphans had young relatives, well, they wouldn't be real orphans. I saw Mary right away. She had on those green slacks I hated even more now because didn't she know that we were going into chapel? Oh, and that fur jacket with the pocket lining so ripped she had to pull to get her hands out of them. But her face was pretty, like always. She smiled and she waved like she was the little girl looking for her mother. Not me. I walked slowly, trying not to drop the jelly beans and hoping the paper handle would hold. I had to use my last chiclet because by the time I finished cutting everything out, all the Elmers was gone. See, I'm left-handed, and the scissors never worked for me. Didn't matter, though. I might just have chewed the gum. Mary dropped to her knees, grabbed me, mashing the basket, the jelly beans, the grass into her ratty fur jacket. Twyla, baby, Twyla, baby! I could have killed her. Already, I heard the big girls in the orchard the next time saying, Twyla, baby. But I couldn't stay mad at Mary while she was smiling and hugging me and smelling of Lady Esther dusting powder. I wanted to stay buried in her fur all day. To tell the truth, I forgot about Roberta. Mary and I got in line for the traipse into chapel, and I was feeling proud because she looked so beautiful, even in those ugly green slacks that made her behind stick out. Now, pretty mother on earth is better than a pretty, beautiful dead one in the sky. Well, even if she did leave you all alone to go dancing. I felt a tap on my shoulder, turned, saw Roberta smiling. I smiled back, but not too much, lest somebody think this visit was the biggest thing that ever happened in my life. Then Roberta said, Mother, I want you to meet my roommate, Twyla. And that is Twyla's mother. I looked up, seemed for miles. Ooh, she was big, bigger than any man, and on her chest was the biggest cross I'd ever seen. I swear, it was 6 inches long each way. And in the crook of her arms was the biggest Bible ever made. Now, Mary, simple-minded as ever, grinned and tried to yank her hand out of the pocket with the raggedy lining to shake hands, I guess. Roberta's mother looked down at me and then looked down at Mary, too. She didn't say anything, just grabbed Roberta with her Bible-free hand and stepped out of line, walking quickly to the rear of it. Mary was still grinning because she's not too swift when it comes to what's really going on. Then this light bulb goes off in her head and she says, that bitch, really loud. And us almost in the chapel now. Organ music whining, the bonny angels singing sweetly. Everybody in the world turned around to look, and Mary would have kept it up, kept calling names, if I hadn't squeezed her hand as hard as I could. Now, that helped a little, but she still twitched and crossed, uncrossed her legs all through the service. even groaned a couple of times. Why did I think she would come there and act right? Slacks. No hat like the grandmother, and viewers, and groaning all the while. When we stood for hymns, she kept her mouth shut, wouldn't even look at the words on the page. She actually reached in her purse for a mirror to check her lipstick. All I could think of was that, she really needed to be killed. The sermon lasted a year, and I knew the real orphans were looking smug again. We were supposed to have lunch in the teacher's lounge, but Mary didn't bring anything, so we picked fir and cellophane grass off the mashed jelly beans and ate them. Oh, I could have killed her. I sneaked a look at Roberta. Her mother had brought chicken legs and ham sandwiches and oranges and a whole box of chocolate-covered grams. Roberta drank milk from a thermos while her mother read the Bible to her. Things are not right. The wrong food is always with the wrong people. Now, maybe that's why I got into waitress work later on, to match up the right people with the right food. Roberta just let those chicken legs sit there. But she did bring a stack of grams up to me later, when the visit was over. I think she was sorry that her mother would not shake my mother's hand. And I liked the fact that she didn't say a word about Mary groaning all the way through the service and not bringing any lunch. Roberta left in May when the apple trees were heavy and white. On her last day, we went to the orchard to watch the big girls smoke and dance to the radio. Oh, didn't matter that they said, "Twyla, baby." We sat on the ground and breathed. Lady Esther, apple blossoms. I still go soft when I smell one or the other. Roberta was going home. The big cross and the big Bible was coming to get her, and she seemed sort of glad and sort of not. I thought I would die in that room of 4 beds without her. And I knew Bozo had plans to move some other dumped kid in there with me. Roberta promised to write every day, which was really sweet of her because she couldn't read a lick. So how could she write to anybody? I would have drawn pictures, sent them to her, but she never gave me her address. Little by little, she faded. Her wet socks with the pink scallop tops and her big, serious-looking eyes. That's all I could catch when I tried to bring her to mind. And so, next Friday, we are going to see how Recitatif resolves itself in Toni Morrison's immortal words. Till then, have a good weekend.